96 years old now and still living on his own, in the same house he'd bought in Strawn when he got married. Living alone, but it couldn't last. They were going to have to deal with it. He lived on buttered crumpets spread with leatherwood honey, nip of scotch in the evening, a morning bracer when it was particularly wet and cold. Tall once, but stooping these days and leaning on a cane and too thin for his daughter's liking, though he got about steady enough. It was just the getting up and sitting down. A neat man, he mostly wore a baggy brown suit over a red or blue check flannelette shirt, buttoned up high to the last, though still loose around his sinewy neck. His grey hair was trimmed short and combed back, a slight wave to it, the shape of his felt hat moulded in the brill cream. In the dark green band of the hat there was a small feather, the same colour as his hair, except flecked in brown. It was from one of his old champion racing pigeons, the one he used to call Mr. Mims. When I retired, the little bugger, a peregrine had roughed him up a bit, he flew messages between your mother and me. Bring home milk and eggs, stuff like that. Antonia found one of the notes in a photo album. I love you, my dearest. After her mother's cancer, Dickie got rid of all the birds. There was a moment on the drive out of Hobart, maybe an hour and a half in, after the cleared, dry yellow paddocks had begun to grow into larger and larger hills, and the blue sky brilliance had slowly, imperceptibly steeled and greyed, and there were no other cars anywhere, or birds or sheep, and the horizon kept climbing up and up, when suddenly it was dark, and the trees towered overhead, and the road was tight with curves and narrow and steep, and it was as though the car had passed through some portal, arrived somewhere else that felt not hours away from where you had started, but rather weeks, months, years. Antonia always felt it, balm and foreboding in one. In Strawn it was different. Beside the vast harbour there, on the jetty where she stopped to stretch her legs before driving on to her father's house, there was a stillness she could never quite describe. It was in every breath. It was ancient and newly born. A drizzly rain had fallen, and there was a thinned but lingering late-morning fog, gull-grey in the gentle light. Nudged into the bays, it reached the shore, ballooned, scooped. It was a gift of calm. It offered no other choices. She turned the radio off the rest of the way and opened her window, let the air pour in as the trees waved her on. Her father answered the door. "Hello, love." "Dad?" His thin, once cragged face had smoothed over and babied in the way of old men, though the crooked, narrow wedge of nose still dominated the terrain. His lips looked a little blue. He kissed his daughter, took her hands in his. They were shaky, sun-spotted, hard-knuckled at every joint, the skin cold and wormy-veined. He gave her a squeeze. "Here for the bones, then?" Antonia smiled, nodded. "Mine, or the ones they found?" "Both," she said. "Saves me another trip up. You always were practical-minded." They went inside. The house smelled pissy, closed, damp. Her father led her into the kitchen. She saw that one of his trouser-leg cuffs was half tucked into his sock. "I'll do it," she said. "You sit down." Normally he'd insist on making the tea. Instead, he pulled out a stool and settled in at the laminated bench. Antonia flicked the kettle on. "Still smoking?" he said, hopeful, and slid across a shallow tin ashtray. "You never know." "It's on your breath, love." "Might have been the bloke I met on the way here." The kettle started to motor. "Upstanding citizen, I hope." "I nabbed a hair sample," Antonia said. "We'll see." She was relieved her father seemed sharper. "Anyway, you know you're not supposed to smoke, Dad." "The man's always allowed his last." "What am I, the firing squad?"